Welcome to Anemone Flower Painting Part 1. In this part we will paint flower head of this composition. But first I need to prepare paper. I cut my paper samples from big sheets. In previous video we did anemone flower petal with water drop. Before starting something bigger and more complex, it is so good to practice a little smaller piece, a separate section from the composition, or a detail like we did. Now we can go into more complex painting. I have 2 water jars, palette, brushes, watercolors, and watercolor mixes from the anemone petal. Mostly I will be using Ultramarine Blue and Permanent Rose. As you practice something smaller, always keep a record of your color mixes so you know next time which pigments were you using. Applying graphite layer to the other side of line drawing. Outlining line drawing. Now let's start painting. We'll be painting one petal at a time. Be sure that your water is clean after mixing watercolors. Painting with round synthetic brush, applying water on first petal. I have a reference opened right beside me and I'm following. All information is in the reference. This first petal is beautifully curved towards the viewer, towards us, and the curved petal part is lighter and inner backside part of the petal is darker. But also notice that there are lighter and darker areas. First layer is all about setting right relationships between light area, halftones, shadow area. Don't apply just watercolor layer to cover the surface. Think where you are putting pigment, where you are placing lights and darks. Here I'm adding more watercolors. The surface is still a little bit moist and I can add more. We can see that this anemone is very dark and saturated of reference, and we need to paint a lot of layers to achieve this saturation. But in the first layer I'm going quite dark. If I compare to my other paintings, that I'm going quite dark because I know that I will be painting more and more. With a clean and dry brush I'm wiping out pigment from the edge of the petal. I see in the reference that the very edge of this curved petal has a very fine white line, and also wiping out lighter areas from petal veins. While the surface is moist, I can do that quite freely with the brush, with synthetic brush. Just clean it in water, dry it in paper towel, and wipe the pigment from the paper surface. Painting approach and technique for the rest of the petals is the same. Applying water, applying first watercolor layers starting from the shadow area and pushing watercolors towards the lightest area. Don't rush things. Paint carefully, transparently, and slowly. Constantly check the reference. All the information is there. You can see all color tones, all tonal values in your reference. First layer is done, the surface is dry, and now we can continue with applying more finer brush strokes with finer tip brush, starting from the shadow, starting from the darker area on this composition. Gradually building saturation and darkness of this anemone flower. It is very dark in the reference, but we'll get there. Slowly and gradually, and you will achieve more realistic result. If you will paint too saturated and too dark too fast, you can end up with a flat looking painting. Still moving slowly forward, and as you can see, even after more layers, it's still not quite as the reference, and that is okay. You can paint further, trust the process, and you will get there. It's just a matter of patience and follow the steps of technique of achieving realistic look by layers, by gradual transitions. It is all about careful observation of the reference and also transparent layers of watercolors. Speeding up the painting process. Full tutorial is available on my Patreon. You can subscribe and paint along from the very beginning till finishing touches. By subscribing to my Patreon channel, you can also get access to more than 150 tutorials in real time and with explanation of the painting process. Here is a side view of my brush strokes, so you get an idea how my brush is touching the paper surface, and you can see only tip of the brush is working and tip of the brush is touching paper surface to achieve those very fine lines. Let's place a reference right beside our painting and see how much with contrast and darkness we still need to go. Time to time, place your painting right beside the reference and you will see how much work you need to do more. Adding finishing touches to this anemone flower head painting. There's still room for improvement. Compared to the reference, my anemone is a little bit lighter. I encourage you to paint further, paint some extra 20-30 minutes, and you will see how your anemone flower will become more realistic and more beautiful. In part 2, I will be painting stem and leaves for this anemone painting. Hope you learned something new and enjoyed the process of painting. Thank you. Bye bye.